So far away, Nisha. Favourite comedian?
I'm going to have to say Lee Mack.
Pretty good. Tommy Cooper was a fez-wearing comedy magician, often considered one of the finest British comedians to have ever lived. A towering figure in the world of comedy, both metaphorically and literally, Cooper's ability to make people laugh was such that he could bring the house down with a simple gesture. He also tipped people with teabags.
So there might be some people out there who don't know who Tommy Cooper is.
No, which is completely fair because he is from a different time of comedy, but he is often regarded as one of the finest British comedians to have ever lived, and one of the most naturally funny people to have ever graced the stage, to such an extent that his now iconic fez hats that he wore in every single performance that he ever did is considered to be an icon of British pop culture. And I love the fact that he wore a fez, one, because it's really stupid, and two, because Tommy Cooper was 6'5".
Yeah,
he was already fucking massive. Then he wore this tiny little hat to make him that little bit taller.
Oh yeah, that's a great thing though, because it's just so random. That's what makes it funny, because you just think, why?
And the answer to why Tommy Cooper wore a fez goes all the way back to around World War II. Because this is how old Tommy Cooper was. He fought in World War II and performed comedy in the immediate aftermath. He was set to do a gig in Cairo and forgot his costume, and noticed that all the waiters there were wearing fezzes. And on a whim, he grabbed the fez off of one of these passing waiters and wore it, walked out on stage, got such a massive laugh at this huge, towering guy wearing this tiny little fez that he decided to wear it for the rest of his career. And I just feel bad for that waiter, because like, man, he probably had a rough day, didn't he? It's like, what happened to your hat? And he's like, a giant man stole it. He's like, no, he didn't. And the thing is, you're not going to find Tommy Cooper. Keep in mind he was a magician, so he probably just disappeared. Ha! I did it. Yes. Magician disappearing joke. And Nisha, how familiar are you with Tommy Cooper's routine?
So I've seen bits of his stuff. I know when he is a magician, he's like a bad magician, like air quote, bad magician.
Yes, so people again who don't know, Tommy Cooper's shtick was that he was a comedy magician where the tricks very often went wrong. And that probably makes him sound like a pretty shitty magician, but the opposite is true. Tommy Cooper was an immensely talented magician. It's just that he got more laughs when the tricks went wrong. And it takes a skilled magician to make a trick look like it's going wrong, because you need to have complete control over what's happening to make it look like it's going wrong and then do the trick properly afterwards.
I shall now produce an empty cloth for live ducks. Oh! I got away again.
It's like it takes a really good artist to draw badly on purpose.
It reminds me of when I went to see a play, I think a couple of years ago, which was Peter Pan Goes Wrong. Because I found it really amusing.
And it takes a really talented actor to deal with something like that, because they have to have really good improvisational skills to be able to deal with shit that's going wrong on the fly in character. And Tommy Cooper was similarly very good at improvisation, would often go on stage without a set planned. He'd just go out, do a couple of tricks and then riff on whatever happened, and that takes some fucking balls as a comedian. It reminds me a little bit of the comedian Ross Noble, who does 2-hour shows for which he only has an hour of material prepared because he improvises the rest. And it's like, that is so ballsy.
I really like it when comedians involve the audience and they can make jokes on what people say. Because obviously it's random, they don't know what they're going to say. Like later in the routines, they can come back to stuff the audience said earlier and still make jokes about it. And it just amazes me, like, the wit that they have.
And that's just a sign of a very good comedian, which Tommy Cooper absolutely was. And like, just some of the things he does still put me on my arse when I think of them. Like, just the noises he'd make. It's not so stupid. Like, when he's doing his magic, he's going, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, why are you doing this? But it makes you laugh every single fucking time.
Now, when I make the clock disappear from the box, so pull a hammer hand of a one.
God, you sound like that scene in Bruce Almighty.
Just a little bit, yeah. I don't remember the exact note, but I just know he just go, what happened with that? Something like just gibberish. Like, no abracadabra here, just gibberish. And it works because he did it with such sincerity. You can believe that he thinks he's doing magic when he's in that moment.
I remember there was a bit of a routine I saw where he was just like kind of shuffling back and forth like he didn't know what he was doing. Like he was just walking back and forth and people were just laughing at him because he just looked lost. It just comes across as funny even though he's not really doing anything. That's skill.
Which similar Rowan Atkinson, who we've talked about in a video before, where he can make people laugh with just his face.
Yes.
He's done entire sets before where he doesn't say a word and people would break down in hysterics. So there's a famous comedy skit done by Rowan Atkinson where he went on stage with a piece of paper. And it's just him pretending to look at names on a piece of paper without ever saying a word, and it brought the house down. He's just that talented a physical comedian. It's that's fucking that's more impressive than any well-crafted joke. And it's something you can see in real life, because I think we all know or have encountered a person who is just bad at telling stories or jokes, or finds a way to tell stories or jokes in a way that just stops them being funny.
Yeah, I'm very much like that.
Oh, no, don't put yourself down like that, Nisha. You don't need that, but...
I do all the time, though, because I'm terrible at remembering stuff. So I go and tell a funny story or a joke, and I'll forget certain parts of it, or forget the punchline, or I'll just say it the wrong way around, and it's I've just ruined it.
Yeah, it happens, but it happens for the best of us.
Alright, so you mentioned he could make people laugh with just one gesture.
Yeah, just walking out on stage, more often than not, would bring the house down.
So do you have any other examples of that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think the best example of it is a story told by another comedian, because Tommy Cooper is one of those few people who could be argued to have earned the moniker of the comedian's comedian, because even his peers would piss themselves laughing at virtually anything he did. And there's a story told of a time he was meant to give an after-dinner speech at a comedy club, filled with other comedians. And when the guy on stage was okay, now Tommy Cooper would like to say a few words, he stood up, and the entire room just erupted in laughter. Just standing up,
What?
put people on their arse. And he stood for a solid 5 minutes in complete bafflement as people just in hysterics at the idea of him standing up. They're laughing at the anticipation of what he's going to say. That's how good he was. And after the laughter died down, he just looked at his wife and went, I've not even said anything yet, which brought the house down again. People were in hysterics at the idea of what he might say. They, in their head, already knew they were going to laugh, so just started laughing. It's like Robin Williams, isn't it? Had a similar energy.
Yeah.
Where there's just something about him was funny. Anything he did was hilarious just because of the reputation he managed to forge as a comedian. And you can't buy that, and you can't bottle it.
So, Tommy Cooper, famous comedian who wore the fez, didn't he die on stage?
Yes, unfortunately, Tommy Cooper is a member of the very exclusive club of comedians who literally died on their ass on stage. And what makes it worse for him is that part of his routine was pretending to be injured, or pretending to, just not be well. One that sticks in my mind, and will always stick in my mind, is just he'd come on stage and go, oh, I've had a terrible pain here all day, and he'd pull out a small window pane.
Oh,
he was it's so stupid, but it's so good.
Oh, dear, I've had a pain here all day. Look at that.
And then you had I think the comedian Red Foxx, who would pretend to have a heart attack and then died of a heart attack on stage, and he died with people laughing at him, thinking it was a joke.
Oh, God.
It's the same thing happened to Tommy Cooper. He had a heart attack on stage and people thought it was part of his routine. The story goes that even when, they turned the lights off, shut the curtains, and, try to drag him behind the curtains to resuscitate him, because he was a fucking massive dude. People were laughing right up until he died.
Jesus.
It's that's rough. But at the same time, it's darkly poetic. A comedian to literally die on stage. The last thing that they hear before they die is the audience laughing at them. It's sad, but if I didn't mention it, someone in the comments would be like, oh, why didn't you talk about the fact that he died on stage? Because it's not funny when people die. Anyway, bringing it back to when Tommy Cooper was alive, he famously, or infamously I should say, had many vices, one of which was alcohol, the other of which was being a tight ass. And in regards to the former, Cooper would reportedly drink alcohol to calm his nerves before he went on stage, but then became addicted to it. So much so, there are stories from people who knew him saying that he would put whiskey on his morning cereal.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
God.
And that's bad, but at the same time, it's a fucking baller move to be the guy who invented Beerios. I always thought they were a myth. I always thought Beerios were a myth. But you don't know about Beerios?
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine did once have Beerios, and he did not enjoy it. But Tommy Cooper would put whiskey on his cereal. And, ever the comedian, if someone saw him do it, he'd go, well, it's healthier.
Is it?
There's less cholesterol in alcohol.
Okay, so Tommy Cooper liked his alcohol.
Yes, a little bit too much, some would say.
And he was also known as being a colossal tight arse.
Yes, he was well regarded as the tightest man in show business around the time he performed, and he reportedly never left a tip for anything and would haggle and scream about the price of near enough everything, to the point where just people would just refuse to go out with him because he would never buy a round. He was one of those guys. He was that guy who, when it was his turn to buy a round, gone. Disappears into the ether.
Like a magician.
Yeah, like a magician. Just disappears. And speaking of which, he would use his skills as a magician to avoid giving people tips. And Tommy Cooper would use his skills as a magician to avoid tipping dormant by presenting them with one of 3 envelopes, one of which contained money, and asking them to pick the one they wanted. And he would then use sleight of hand to ensure they always picked an empty envelope and go, I guess, better luck next time.
Oh my God.
Then you have the drivers who would take Tommy Cooper to and from his gigs, who he'd go through like one a week because they would always refuse to drive him the next time. Because every single time someone drove, you think, I'm driving one of the biggest, most famous, successful comedians in the business today. Surely he's at the very least he's going to give me a tip. And Tommy Cooper was not about that life, and he always paid his taxi fare in exact change. But what he would do is, just as he left the cab, he'd slide something surreptitiously into the driver's pocket and go, look, that's from me. Have yourself a drink on me when your shift's over. And the person's like, oh yeah, okay, that's probably like, 20 quid note or something like that. Get home, teabag. Teabag. And again, dick move, but you've got to respect the hustle. So far away, Nisha, since we've been talking about a comedian and people like, bursting into fits of hysterics, when's the last time something put you on your arse laughing? So
recently, for the past couple of days, I've been on a bit of a Sims binge.
Okay.
So I've been playing The Sims 4. Every time I play The Sims, I'll binge it for a week and then not play it again for a year.
We've all been
it's
there.
Really unhealthy, but just like the glitches in that game are the funniest. And my sim was on this date with this guy.
Okay.
And he was sitting at a table and she went over to talk to him, and the game glitched and he just started singing. He just had this really unnerving look on his face, and he was just singing. And I started recording it because I found it hilarious. And he just started going ho 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 like that over and over again. And I was just pissing myself laughing.
So you know what? We've all been on a date where you thought, "Fuck it, I need to impress this girl. I know to impress her. My operatic scales." I'm assuming you said you recorded it.
Yeah, I recorded it.
So here's the clip then. Keeping it in the realm of video games, something that sent my sides into orbit and I will remember until the day I die, is a friend of mine just got Grand Theft Auto, and I was watching him play it. And he got to the part of the game where you can go on the helicopter tours.
Yeah.
And he got in, and he pressed the button to go onto the tour, and we're touring the city. And it's just a 5-minute cutscene of you just going around the city as a guy explains everything to you. And my friend was like, this is kind of cool, but how do you think you skip it? And I just went, try Y. And Y, or triangle, is how you get in and out of vehicles. And he pressed it and just... without any sort of prompting, Nico Bellic just threw himself from the helicopter. And so my friend just turned to me and looked at me like I'd shat on his cereal.
I remember years ago when I played it, I'd been bowling with Roman, as you do. And on the way back, I think I ended up getting the police after me.
Yeah.
But it got to a point where the car set on fire, and we're both in the car, and then the car set on fire, so I jumped out and just left Roman in, and it exploded, and I had to go and pick him up from the hospital.
Oh, that happened. A similar thing happened with that same friend, because we fucking loved playing Grand Theft Auto and dicking around, where is that one of the first missions you only go on a date with Michelle?
Yeah.
One of the very early missions, and I guess spoilers for that game, Michelle ends up betraying you, which my friend knew because it was his second playthrough. So he took her on the date, he went bowling with her, it was really nice the entire time. I kept looking over at my friend like, what are you up to? Because he was being really, really nice. He did the date perfectly, right up until they got to her front door, and he just pulled out a shotgun and blew her away. And that alone was fucking hilarious, but it was when he called her on the phone 30 seconds later, he's like, look, Nico, I'm sorry, I've still not got over what you did.
That's what makes it funny, is like, you kill them or they die and they ring you up the next day like, yeah, can you pick me up? Or, yeah, I'm not your friend anymore.
Like, he shot her in the face with a shotgun.